the PIP's strategies so that we can all be on the same page. Allow myself also to remove the video because the bandwidth that it consumes, but you'll be able to hear me clearly as we progress. Thank you. I don't know why I'm trying to share my slides with you. Is there anything I had shared earlier on? I don't know why it's not showing up.
I think it's at the end of your slide. Could you go at the beginning of your slide?
It is still showing up only that it's a dark slide. So I think maybe we could stop sharing and then share fresh.
Let me stop sharing and then I share fresh. Is it there now?
Yes, it is. You just need to now put in a slide mode.
And when I put it in the slide mode, it goes dark.
It is on your last slide. Yeah, it's in your last slide.
Yeah, I think your slide is okay now. Thank you.
Now it's fine. Thanks. Good. Let's go quickly with these slides. I'll take us the shortest time possible so that we can have ample time to interact and to ask questions and to get clarifications. So let's agree. Let's start by asking ourselves. Yes, what's a PIP? We are all practitioners in the HR field, and the term PIP comes up every now and then when we are doing our performance management programs. And the PIP is one of the tools that we use when we want to ensure that our workers, our operators are able to effectively and efficiently deliver their mandates. So you're saying that these are documents, they are tools that are aimed to address and remedy employees' underperformance or failure to meet certain job expectations. Because when you have a performance management plan, then obviously it's important to ensure that you progressively review and you're able to determine that the workers or the operators are able to meet those targets. We are saying it's a tool aimed at helping an employee to reach their fullest potential rather than a punitive measure. So properly implemented, it should be able to ensure that you are getting your employee to perform to their best optimum level, rather than to use it as a tool to whip and to penalize these particular workers. And it should be created in partnership with the HR team and the immediate supervising manager of the individual employee that you want to issue these tools to, whose performance needs to be addressed. So it is not a one-off thing that anybody can just decide to develop. It has to be developed in partnership between the teams and the supervisors and the persons whose performance needs to be addressed. Management uses it to clarify and outline very clear, measurable goals, expectations, and timelines for improvement. Yeah, so this is part of the understanding of what a PIP is all about. It's a roadmap for employees to follow along with regular checkpoints to address progress. So as I say, it is not a set in and forget it document. No, it should be one of those documents that are, part of the strategic instruments that an organization uses to be able to take itself to the next level of its operation using the workers that it has employed. They are not designed to serve as punishment or to function solely as a paper trail for managers who want to terminate someone on their team. Many a times we've seen these documents, this tool being used when a certain manager or a certain supervisor has an issue with a certain employee. And it's introduced in a hasty way, it's introduced in a skewed way, in a manner that it's final intention is either to punish or to separate this particular employee from the organization. So we are saying it is not designed for that. It should not be used for that. It should be used to progressively get the best performance out of an employee. While the importance for compliance purposes, they should be used with the goal of genuine improvement of the person who is being issued with this particular uh, document. It's a good tool for both HR and employees. It establishes clarity and transparency, okay, regarding performance. Because many a times, issues of performance is very sensitive and at times very emotional. And if you don't have the right tool and the right clarity of what's supposed to be done, then you'll find disputes and conflicts arising. But if you have a good tool, a good PIP that clarifies transparency on performance, then employees will not be confused about where they stand. All right. It is said that 65% of employees say they actually want more feedback as long as it's actionable and constructive. Okay, this is feedback from their supervisors, from their leaders, from their managers. If it is constructive, it is actionable, then workers will be happy to receive that feedback and be able to improve on that feedback that is coming from their supervisors and managers. And we also say that almost 25% of employees have considered leaving their jobs because their managers provide inadequate feedback. There's nothing as bad as doing something and you're not being told whether you're doing it well or wrong. But then come the end of the year, you are told you're not a good performer. It's not constructive. It's not actionable. So most employees, when there's no feedback, they feel, am I really adding value? Am I in the right place? Am I in the right employment? And 25% may opt or consider leaving their jobs because of that. Implementing a good base performance improvement plan is important to maintain a culture of feedback. Once you have that plan well implemented, the feedback will be continuous. It will be structured, and it will make people remain on their jobs. They will not feel that the environment is not conducive. They are not being appreciated. They are not being told what they are doing right or wrong. But they feel that there's progress in what they are doing. If they do a mistake, it's properly picked up, properly highlighted, and they're able to progress with the job. They are best suited for situations where an employee is underperformance but has the potential to improve. Okay. There are so many reasons why people underperform. But then at the point of recruitment, there was potential. You saw that this guy can do this job. But along the way, he or she is unable to meet those targets and those particular objectives. So a PAP comes in handy to ensure that you realign this particular employee so that he can pick up his performance, bring it up to par, and then that potential that you saw at the point of recruitment is properly realized. So it is a good and very important tool. And it should never be the first step of addressing underperformance. Okay? Just you wake up in the morning and say, I'm giving you a PAP. Yeah, you have not undertaken the initial conversation and they have not yielded results. And these initial conversations are the ones we're talking about, setting up very clear KPIs, the performance system, having clear understanding by the employee that is what is expected of him or her within the quarter, within the half year, within the year, and then progressively evaluating and assessing. And then when you do not get the right performance at the time, you bring in the PIP. Don't start with the PIP first. It should come at the end where now issues are getting out of hand and results are not being realized. It should be tailored to the individual. Yeah. Because there are particular circumstances of the situation that make that particular employee not perform. So my PIP cannot be the same as my colleague. It should be specific to me and tailored to my issues or situations and circumstances that are making my performance
Mamu kona
go.
earphones.
below par. It is at the discretion of the employer's manager and the HR team to determine when a PAP is appropriate, based on those specific circumstances that I was talking about. Okay, so the HR team guides the manager, the immediate supervisor is involved, and they know when it is time to apply a PAP. Okay, so what are the scenarios when a PAP may be necessary? We are talking about below performance, subpar performance, when an employee is consistently falling short of the expected targets, expected performance standards, and fails to meet key KPIs. Okay, and those are well outlined in the job description of the individual on a periodic frame, whether it's a yearly objectives, which are broken down into quarters. And so that is the time you can see this performance, this guy, this person, this worker is not meeting those particular targets. Repeated missed deadlines. An employee frequently misses deadlines or struggles to complete tasks within specified timelines. And this has already been discussed earlier on using those other mechanisms and conversation under the performance management system. And then a PIP will come in handy. Unprofessional conduct, cases of unprofessional behavior, violation of company policies, well, some of which may lead to termination. So there are some that you may pick up and say, you need to improve on this. Our reporting time is this. The policy says you are supposed to be at your workplace at this time and leave at this time. If somebody has a consistency of not complying with those policies, then you can issue a PIP. Okay. Skill gaps. When an employee's skills do not align with their job requirements, or if they are not keeping up with the company or the industry's best practices. This needs to be looked at holistically so that at the point of recruitment, as I said earlier on, have you gotten the right skill fit? Because if you don't have the right skill fit, believe you me, you'll have issues of performance, you'll have issues of underperformance, and then you start, issuing PIPs every now and then. But if you get it right at the point of recruitment, you will reduce your issues of performance and skills gap issues tremendously. So this should be looked at the point of recruitment. Consistent attendance problems, missing work, arrives late, takes excessive or unapproved leaves of absence. At this point in time, you should be able to issue a PIP because it is continuous, it is persistent, it is regular, and the employee needs to be brought back on course and be aligned to the direction that is important for the organization. When there is a failure to adapt, you may find employees who are struggling to adapt to changes within the organization. Whether there is a reorganization, a change of ownership, leadership of the organization, people are used to certain ways of doing things, and then here comes a new management that has a new style of doing things, and then you find people failing to comply or to adopt in time, and therefore it leads to poor performance, it leads to missed deadlines, it leads to quality issues, so it needs to be addressed, and a TFP will come in handy in this particular kind of respect. Okay, we are saying that issues around behavior or conduct aren't very well suited for performance improvement plans. It's very hard to set attainable goals for something like insubordination or harassment because it's not measurable. Your level of insubordination or the way your harassment character, you're a guy who likes harassing people, that cannot be measured and cannot be uh, time assessed. So some of these behaviors, personal behaviors, are a bit difficult to implement a PFP on. Other personal issues could be affecting the employee's performance, not necessarily their skills or their training. Personal issues at home, family issues, medical issues could be affecting. There could be other issues like geographical, political issues that are making it difficult for this particular person to be at work on time. And even when he or she comes, then they are not able to focus because they are distracted by certain matters happening at home. And you need to be alive and very careful to understand these situations and the backgrounds and be able to determine what do you need to do. Do you need to do a PIP or do you need to give more assistance in terms of either medical and mental health support if they're suffering from that? If it's a medical issue, do you need to intervene and get this person well treated so that they can stop being pulled back by their medical issues? If it's issues of family, what do they need? Do they need counselors? Family issues with the spouses and children. These things can affect performance. And as managers, we need to be alive to that and not go straight into issuing a PFPs when there could be other underlying issues that can be looked at and that can be able to change the situation. We ask ourselves, is a PIP a disciplinary step? Because many a times I've seen institutions, companies, organizations, as I said earlier on, using this as a way or as a process to get a disciplinary matter out of hand or to conclude it. And we are saying no, it's not designed to discipline people. It's meant to serve as an opportunity for them to get their performance where it needs to be. Newly employed employed persons, workers, during the probation period, you do a PIP if they are not meeting the expected targets or their performance is deemed to be below par. Somebody who has a continuous behavior or non-compliance with the company policies and statutes, do you need to do a PIP or do you need to go now to the grievance handling mechanism or procedures to handle that particular omission or commission that the employee has undertaken? So be very careful to know when to separate the disciplinary process and a PIP. PIPs, let's deal with them in matters of performance, non-performance, based on the performance management system of the organization and using the already agreed KPIs, which are very clear, which are very smart, so to speak, and which speak to the objective of the department, the objective of the company, and the strategic direction the organization is heading to. We're also saying that, however, it can be a prelude to disciplinary action, but it is not fair to assume that it is always would or would require it to be. So have a separation between PIPs and the disciplinary and grievance handling procedure. Let them complement one another, but don't use the PIP to handle disciplinary issues. We also cognizant of the fact that an employee may not have intentionally done something wrong to one under PIP. They may simply need help improving in their work. So also be conscious of that when you are determining when to issue a PIP. Is it intentional? Is it something that is, a character or a behavior that has developed, and this person is progressively and continuously not meeting the targets that have been set? So what are the benefits of using PIPs? And we are saying that in order to improve, employees need a structure. Without an agreed plan in place, the initiative will most likely fail. Believe you me, if you don't have a structure of monitoring and ensuring achievement of the desired targets and objectives of the organization, then any initiative you set up will fail because it will be non-documented, it will be haphazard, it will be impromptu at times, not within certain frameworks that can be, you can fall back into and say, we did this, we we discussed this last year, last quarter, and this is what is happening. You are not changing. So there must be a structure. Otherwise, any initiative will not be able to see the light of day. So what are the benefits? It brings clarity and expectation. Okay? Clear, well-defined roadmap for employees to understand their performance deficiencies and how to improve, eliminating any ambiguity. Yeah. Many times we hear workers say, I didn't know. I wasn't sure that I'm supposed to do this. And then you're asking, haven't you read your JD? Haven't you read understood the standard operating procedure of this particular job that you're doing? So clarity and expectations are brought about when you sit down and discuss with the particular worker on the deficiencies that are there and how he or she needs to improve. And then there's no gray areas hanging that somebody can hang on to and say, I didn't know, I wasn't aware. And as such, you find now it's a brain game. But with clarity and expectations, then a PIP comes into place and it assists in that. And then there's structured improvement. They break down the improvement processes to manageable steps. Okay? Making it easier for employees to focus on specific areas that need enhancement. Okay? Such that step 1, 2, 3, 4 is discussed, agreed upon. And that employee now knows for sure that this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm expected to do. Okay? And then they're able to go those steps one at a time and align to the desired expectation. And the goal is realized. So that is another benefit, that it creates those structured processes that somebody can follow without dropping off. PIPs can also bring about employee retention and morale. By offering employees opportunities to improve their performance, this can lead to improved retention rates. It can boost morale and job satisfaction because they're not just being told you are a bad performer without feedback, without a sit down, without an explanation, without a process being discussed and agreed upon that this is what we're going to do. And these are your shortfalls, these are your deficiencies, this is where you need to improve, this is where you're doing well, and within the next 3 months, we want you to get this level. That way, the employee will feel appreciated. He'll feel that the management or their supervisors are cognizant of their potential, and whatever shortfalls are there, they can be easily addressed and or an opportunity given for them to improve. Therefore, morale and job satisfaction comes in, and as we said, you will not lose people. You will not have unexplained repercussions that can hurt the organization. And well-structured PIPs can be a very good source of ensuring there's legal protection. Companies are able to comply with legal requirements when addressing performance issues. It reduces the risk of legal disputes and potential liabilities. Then we'll tell you for sure that this happens in most cases when you don't handle performance issues in a structured way, in a clear and very unbiased way, and in a way that somebody cannot claim, favorism and stress and all that kind of stuff. So it's important that we use these PIPs to protect the organizations and ensure that we don't expose ourselves to activities or to processes that can be challenged in court in the future and that can bring legal liabilities and disputes to the organization. What about the issue of fairness and transparency? A good PIP will demonstrate that employees are treated fairly and given a fair chance to improve before facing severe consequences. Okay? These days it's very difficult for you to separate with an employee on issues of performance. You have to demonstrate that for sure this person is not performing, and we have applied the necessary mechanisms to address that poor performance. And it has left us with no option after going through all the steps that you have to separate with this particular employee. So the issue of fairness will come in once you have a well-structured PIP. There will be transparency, and you will avoid what we talked earlier on, those legal liabilities and disputes that can arise. Okay, that's one very big benefit of using PIPs in the proper way. And then it improves employee and employer relationships. It encourages open dialogue between employees and employers. It fosters healthier and more constructive working relationships. Where there is no opportunities to discuss issues, where it is top-down instructions without discussion, there is no opportunity for an employee to indicate the reasons as to why and what happened in a particular instance that the job was not done in the right way. Then relationships get strained, and productivity goes up, morale goes down, efficiency goes down, and profitability is affected. But a well-structured PIP plan and the system will encourage that kind of dialogue because it has, those conversations happen, and people are given an opportunity to express themselves, and that way they feel that they are considered important to the organization, and as such, relationships blossom. There's morale, there's more productivity and efficiency within the organization, and workers will feel good that they are not just condemned without a chance to express themselves. And a good PIP will work wonders in this respect. It brings about better employee experiences because workers get more engaged with their managers and they get help from their managers in setting up performance goals. They feel more proud of their work. They produce better results. And there's overall job satisfaction. Okay. The minute a manager decides to be sitting down with his employees, and especially those who are not performing well, through a PIP system that is efficient and well structured, that employee will feel appreciated, and that he'll feel that my manager cares for me. And then together we set the goals, and through the conversations and the feedbacks, then they are proud of the job that they are doing. Okay, so it's very important that we use this tool to improve these experiences between employers and their managers. There is the issue of skilled employees. Skill gaps are often the root cause of many workplace issues and grievances. And once you have a PAP framework that works, you'll be able to pick those gaps, the skill gaps that are within the organization. And out of that, you'll be able to identify training needs so that you can now mitigate on those gaps, do what we call skills improvement trainings that enable this particular employee to perform better. And as such, you're able to have more skilled employees within the organization. So let's talk about how to create, write, and deliver successful PIPs. One, identify the problem areas. Yeah, the specific areas of an employee's performance that require improvement. It cannot be holistic that you're a bad performer. Be specific. Be clear what you're talking about so that this person can be able to know exactly his deficiencies and his weaknesses. These areas should include areas of productivity, quality of work, attendance, or specific job-related skills. Yeah, as I said, it should not be just generalized issue that you're a bad performer and you're not doing well. So be specific, go to the issues. Collect relevant data to support your assessment. Okay. You cannot accuse somebody of non-performance if you don't have the evidence. Okay. And if we go to court, as Dan will be telling us, you have to demonstrate what facts do you have to justify your accusation or your concern. And this data may include past performance reviews, reports, and any other relevant documents. You should dwell and lean on the employee's job description because that's where you derive your KPIs in the JD. And then the yearly objectives and the goals that have been set, and then you're able to see the gaps. And that's where now the employee supervisor comes in handy because this is the guy who is with this employee on a day-to-day basis, morning to evening. He knows everything that goes around this person, and he's able to assess and to give a clear, view of what happens, but based on the job description. Anything that is out of the job description will bring issue because workers will say, it's not in my JD. You cannot accuse me of not doing it, yet you are not clearly outlined it in my JD and the yearly objectives. So have the relevant data in your hands, then you can be able now to structure your PIP. Communicate clear expectations, and then you set the goals. Okay. These expectations should be very specific so that there is no ambiguity and there is clarity of what this employee is expected to do within a certain period of time. Okay. Remember, this is a roadmap and not a list of grievances. So you don't just come and list everything you can think about this person does that you would like to address. Let it be a roadmap that ensures that you work together with this particular employee and you change his performance level, make it more productive and more efficient, and then he becomes valuable to the organization. Then document the plan with a PFP template. Every organization will have its own design, but let it be documented. This is a written plan that outlines the goals, the timelines, and the consequences of not meeting those goals. Without it, as I said earlier on, you'll just be discussing it's your word against my word, and that will not be able to add value to the organization. So let's have these plans well documented. Let's have very clear templates that are designed with the guidance of your compliance and legal teams so that there's no loophole and there's no gap that can be used against you into the future. Schedule a meeting with the employees, arrange private meetings, and I emphasize here private meetings with the employees to discuss the PIP. Let it not be a collective engagement because it will not be able to, you'll not be able to make any positive headway. HR should be involved in the creation of the plan. And the meetings are generally between the supervising manager and the employee. The minute you bring in the HR manager to the meeting, you intimidate this particular person, and he feels now that his goose is being cooked, and then you will not be able to achieve the objectives of this particular plan. But HR should be involved in the creation of the plan. But then let the discussions happen between the individual employee and the supervising manager. And what is the expectation here is to introduce the plan and get a buy-in from the employee. Without a buy-in, then you'll be, you'll be timing. There must be a good buy-in because the worker will be able to walk the journey and commit himself to the process. And then it's usually very important to have a formal acknowledgement of the planning license so that once you've discussed it with the employee, you put pen on paper and agree that we've agreed on these and these objectives. These are the goals we have set, and these are the timelines that we have set. and let this particular employee put pen on paper, acknowledging and accepting that this is what we're gonna do. We also think that you identify the resources that will be required to support the process. You could be talking about trainings, additional training. You could be talking about mentorship programs. Then, do we have the right tools for the job to be done? You have disputes and grievances, you targets, and they're not providing the tools to do the jobs. Then how do you expect this particular employee to achieve the set objectives? So, and then the issue of time bound is very critical. Be sure to agree when this change of performance is expected to be realized. Then set monitoring and evaluation points. Specify how progress will be monitored and assessed because the PIP. This can include regular check-ins, evaluations, performance metrics. Agreed. The underlying one here is agreed between the manager and the employee. Okay, let them be regular, so that it's not left to run on its own out of gear. It should be periodic check-ins that enable realignment if you find the person is losing traction. Then step number 8, review and adjust as necessary. Those reviews, those regular check-ins and evaluations will will enable the employee's progress to be reviewed and provide constructive feedback. We talked about constructive feedback earlier on. Okay, that way the employee will feel that yes, I'm being appreciated for what I'm doing. There could be some setbacks, and then if there are there's any particular area that needs to be changed or adjusted or goal based on the particular circumstances, then this is the time to review and to adjust it so that the PFE becomes effective. So what are the tips for successful PFE process? We are saying that a PFE can be a very stressful process. Yeah, because many times workers feel as if it's a criticism that is being meted out to them, and they feel uncomfortable. And the PFEs have a reputation for being many employers' last attempt at an employee improvement before they are left to go. It has happened many times. We've seen PFEs being used either as disciplinary or as an end to the separation process, so that you can have a document that will say that you tried to do, yeah.
Apollo, I hope you're about to finish in another 5 minutes so that you also have time for Dan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's be careful about how we handle them, how we handle the PFP, so that we don't stress workers with it, and they become more objective and more optimistic when they are put into this. So we are saying identify the root cause, get to the heart of the matter, analyze the work habits, the skills, and the environment, prioritize communication, timely, clear, transparent communication between the managers is critical. Establish clear guidelines and policies. You have a policy, even a PFP policy, that the organization knows that this is how we handle PIPs, and it's known by all the departments and all the leadership of the organization, and the workers themselves are aware of these guidelines and policies. Very important to have that. Then train managers and all HR personnel so that everybody is on the same page. And also be careful to ensure that the legal compliance issues, effective communication is adhered to, and then identify performance issues proactively. Encourage managers to identify issues as early as possible and promptly to address them before they escalate. Okay? Improve the employee in the process, collaborate with the employee to develop the PIP, ensure that they have a clear understanding of their goals, responsibilities, and expectations. And then they will have ownership because of their active participation. And then you set clear and measurable goals. Encourage flexibility. Okay, let there be. It's not static that it has to be like this, because circumstances change and situations change. So there should be flexibility to allow for amendments and improvements. Then there must be consistency and fairness, so that the issue of discrimination does not come about. I'm moving quickly because of time. Provide regular feedback and coaching, very important. Document process and outcomes, and then reward along the way, so that the persons being processed through this tool are able to see and to be appreciated that they are on the right traction. Focus on positiveness of the performance improvement plan, and then evaluate and learn. So how long should a PIP last? Well, they vary based on the employee's role, the nature of the performance issues, and the level of support that they need. We are saying that typically 30 to 90 days, yeah, and should always be tailored to what is realistic to the situation, yeah, and the time it will take to demonstrate meaningful change. Shorter periods of 30 days often work for straightforward behavior change, while complex skills gaps or performance problems usually call for 60 to 90 days, depending on their complexity. And then, whatever varies, the most important thing is to set clear, realistic timeframes with specific milestones, and so the plan feels fair, structured, and actionable, not clash. And that is it, members. I had to rush it because of time. Thank you so much for your time. Back to you, Dan.
All right, thank you. Give us a thumbs up if you are still here with us. Give us your reaction if you're still here with us. So you can also, if you have any question, put in the chat box. You can comment, give us your what you take away from our first presentation. So allow me to share my screen. I'll move fast in the interest of time. Kindly confirm if you can see my screen. Just give me a thumbs up, confirm if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Dan, we can see your screen.
All right. So in the interest of time, I just want to talk about a few things that have happened in the corridors of the courts, and just to pick some few lessons, just to be able to establish some best practices within the Kenyan context on how the issues of performance improvement plan has been ruled in different scenarios. So in the interest of time, I just take you quick so that you're able to understand how do we best manage a performance improvement plan so that we do not find it serves its purpose. So you can also give me a thumbs up if you have ever managed a performance improvement plan, if you've ever been placed in a performance improvement plan, or you have managed it end to end and it has been successful. So I'll start with the first case. The first case is Ogero versus CIC Kenya Limited. Please, these cases you can find them in the case law, Kenyan case law. This particular case was ruled in the year 2025, and this particular employee, the issue before the court was that this employee was placed on a PIP and later terminated. When the issue went to court, the employee argued that the process was unfair. Why was the process unfair? Why was the process unfair? The process was unfair because the same person that supervised him, that supervised the PIP, is the same person that raised the complaint and he participated in the decision making. The employee, like the process itself was unfair, and the employee was also terminated after the PIP without a disciplinary hearing. What was the court ruling? The court emphasized that PIP was not a disciplinary process. PIP is not a disciplinary process. And even when using PIP, PIP must still comply with the Section 41 of the Employment Act. Some of the few mistakes that we learned from this particular issue was that there was conflicting of roles, that the same person who acted as the supervisor was the complainer and the decision maker. And another key mistake that we realized there was failure to conduct a disciplinary after the PAP had failed. And this itself violated the rules of natural justice. In the rule of natural justice, you cannot be a judge and a complainant in the same case. You cannot be a judge in your own case. So another person must handle the issue so that it becomes as fair as possible. Now, what are some of the key lessons that we can learn from the HR? Employer must separate performance management from disciplinary process and ensure fairness in the decision. You must ensure that there's a fairness in our decision-making process when handling PAP. What is the best practice that we could learn from this case? One is to ensure that individual managed supervision, investigation, and disciplinary decision. After failed, we conduct a proper disciplinary hearing and ensure that you follow Section 41 of the Employment Act to guide you in the same process. Another case that came before the court in the year 2024, was Kamau versus Del Monte. The employee challenged termination for poor performance after being placed on a PAP. The court examined whether the employer followed the proper procedure when dealing with the performance. Then what the court held? The court held that the employer must identify performance gaps, communicate them clearly, and give employees reasonable opportunity to improve before termination. So if on all the two cases you realize the court emphasized that PIP is not a disciplinary. While most of us, we use PIP as a way of preparing an employee for exit. It's just we feel like it's a safer route, but it's one of the most slippery routes that if we pursue without care, we find ourselves in the corridor of court, and of course we might likely lose the case. Now, what are some of the mistakes? There was failure to adequately demonstrate how performance was measured. Sometimes we do not have the metrics to measure performance. We claim that employers not performed, but the question is against what standards? What standards do you have in place to ensure that conclude that your employees have not performed? And also there was lack of clear evidence of support provided to improve performance. So if you do not have evidence, if you do not have clear documentation, if you have not documented your process, then the process is good as null and void. The process becomes null and void, and the employee wins the case. Now, what are some of the lessons that we had? Employer must prove performance standards existed and were communicated to employees. What are these standards that you are measuring against? Do you have standards in your organization that the performance is pegged on? Do you have standards that the performance is measured against? So this must be clearly shown and must be communicated to the employees. Now, what are some of the best practices? The best practices here is, of course, implement clear KPIs system, have frequent performance review, and documented coaching support. There's another case, was Pius versus Rekit Benkilka. The employee claimed that the PAP was introduced suddenly without prior performance concern and that the targets were unrealistic. This is like a witch hunt. We use performance PAP as a way of ticking our boxes to get the employee out of the organization. The code is self-scrutinized. Like anytime you go to anytime you follow these cases, you realize the judge is like a fly on the wall. And the judge will just ask, what will a reasonable person in this situation do? And the court scrutinized where the PIP, whether the PIP was introduced in good faith as a strategy to remove the employee. It is important to know that your intention, the judge can clearly see the intention of the HR or the organization when they're using this PIP. So the court was just scrutinizing. Was it introduced in good faith? Or was it a strategy just to get rid of the employee? And now, one of the mistakes was the sudden introduction of the PIP without prior documented performance concern. This particular employee had no performance concern, but all of a sudden, out of the blues, he was on a PIP. There was also unrealistic targets that were difficult to achieve within the timelines. Are our targets realistic? Are our goals smart? And another thing was failure to align PIP objectives with actually the job responsibilities. Now, What are some of the key lessons HR can learn? PAP must be based on existing performance review and realistic targets. And the best practice we can pick from this case is use consistent performance appraisal system and ensure that employees understand performance gap before introducing PAP. You cannot introduce PAP when the employee does not even understand the requirement of what is the required of them, what is the standard of performance that is required of them. Now, another case that I took, this is like the second last case, then I can move in the next 5 minutes, I should be done. The employee argued, this is Exto versus KCB Bank, that is 2025. The employee argued that he was placed on a PIP but received little support and minimum follow-up meetings before termination. And the court itself assessed whether the employee genuinely supported the employee during this process. Now, what are some of the issues that we can point out from this case? There was lack of follow-up and meetings during the PIP process. This particular employee was put on the PIP and everyone went silent. And he was, I'm sure the person waited for this particular employee to fail, then kick him out of the system. There was also failure to provide mentorship support. There was also insufficient monitoring to improve of employee improvement. Now, what are some of the lessons we could learn? A PAP must involve active coaching, monitoring, and not just a written document. It shouldn't be a written document. It should be active coaching and monitoring. Best practice we could pick from this case is ensure that we hold regular review meetings, provide mentorship where necessary, and document all support provided during this process. These are the only way you can prove that you've supported this particular employee when their performance was declining. Lastly, the case of Churchill, Winston, Ochieng versus I&M Bank Limited, the employee alleged unfair disciplinary process and lack adequate opportunity to respond to the allegation. So this particular employee was accused of poor performance, and he was not given an adequate opportunity to respond to allegation before termination. Now, the question, the court considered whether the employer complied with the procedural fairness and administrative action principle. Now, here, what were some of the mistakes that the employer did? Inadequate time given to respond to the allegation. If an employee has serious performance issues that he needs time to gather evidence to prove that, then he needs to be given adequate time to respond. You cannot, for instance, you cannot accuse an employee of a very hard performance issue and you expect them to respond within 48 hours. Where are they going to get those evidence from? So please ensure that you give them reasonable time and give them adequate time to respond to the allegation. There was also a poor structured disciplinary process. Disciplinary process must comply with the Section 41 of the Employment Act. There was no procedural fairness. There was no fairness in all this. This particular employee was not given. There was not given enough time to respond, and probably the court concluded that the termination was unfair. Employer must ensure that a fair hearing and adequate response time before making the decision. Before you make the decision to terminate that employee, did you give this particular employee adequate time to respond? And did you give them a fair hearing? It is important. And the best practice you could pick also there is provide clear show-cause letters. Was a show-cause letter issued? Adequate time, how much time was given to this particular employee, and a properly constituted disciplinary hearing. Now, we realize there are issues of principle of natural justice. Principle of natural justice, there are two key principles of natural justice. Rule against bias. A person cannot be the judge of their own case. Decision maker have no personal interest, prejudice, and bias. So anytime you are the person that accuse another person, if you are the line manager accuses an employee, this line manager should not be the decision makers in that case. That it will be pointed that the disciplinary process itself will be flawed. Sometimes you might have a very valid reason, but your process is vague, it's flawed. There is also a right to fair hearing. Everyone must be given a right to fair hearing. No one should be condemned and heard. You cannot kill someone without hearing their side of the story. This requires giving the person adequate notice of charges and reasonable opportunity to present their case and evidence. Now, in court, the question is never whether the employee performed poorly. It is whether the employee handled the process fairly and considerately and lawfully. I will point to two key issues here. One, most of us are struggling with the issues of fact and the issues of law. Sometimes we have all the facts, like the employee not performing, that itself is a fact. Taking him through that process, you deciding to put him through a PAP itself is a fact. But is that process fair, consistent, and is it within the boundaries of law? So if you cannot answer that question, then please do not proceed. Lastly, I want to speak about just quickly on the checklist of managing PAP. Before any termination for poor performance, please ensure that you tick all these boxes. If not, do not proceed. Is there a performance framework? Do you have clear KPIs? Because court will require measurement of performance. Ensure that you have clear KPIs. Employees also been made aware of the expectation. You cannot accuse of employee what they don't know. Put the expectation in black and white. Let everyone understand what is expected of them before you accuse them of doing what you do not ask them to do. Performance monitoring. Has performance gap been identified and documented over time? Certain claims of poor performance are always challenged in court. Pre-PIP intervention. Was informal coaching and guidance provided? Court expect effort to correct performance before escalation. You cannot escalate performance when you have not provided a mechanism of supporting them. Of course, line manager need all those coaching sessions. Those have been mentioned by Kiaria. PAP initiation. Is the PAP based on documented performance gap? Do you have those performance gap? Do you have evidence that this particular employee is having performance issues? Ensure that is followed. Then PAP duration reasonable. You cannot put someone on PAP for a whole year. You putting them on a PAP, doing what for all that period of time. Then let's talk about PAP implementation. Are regular review meetings being conducted? We realize in one of the cases, lack of follow-up weakens the employer case. When there's no follow-up, your case is as good as dead. When this employee alleges, you to approve. Is the employee receiving support? Look at that. Then objectivity, fairness, and objectivity. Is there separation of roles? No conflict of interest. We have talked about the rule of natural justice. Let it apply. Same person acting as a judge, supervisor, complainant, violates fairness. You can review the CCI case. Is the process free from bias and consistent across employees? Evaluation. Has the outcome of the IP been formally communicated? The employee must know the results before further action. Provide written outcome of PIP review. Do not hide anything from that point. If no improvement, as HR avoided immediate termination. PIP alone cannot justify termination. Do not terminate directly from PIP. Disciplinary process. Has your letter been issued? The employee been given adequate time to respond? Require under procedural fairness, please refer to section 41 of the Employment Act. Issue adequate notice outlining performance concern. And also, fair hearing is mandatory. This is mandatory. It's non-negotiable. Allow reasonable time to respond. That final decision, is there evidence supporting termination? Employer must prove valid reason and compile all documentation before decision. Is the decision fair, reasonable, and documented? Assess both reason and the process. Anytime you find yourself in court, the court will look at, do you have the reason for terminating this particular employee, and did you follow the process? You can have a valid reason, you did not follow the process, you lose the case. You can follow the process, you don't have a valid reason, you still lose the case. So two must go hand in hand. Provide written reason for termination. Final documentation, all your records available. Review coaching, hearing minutes. Cases are won and lost based on documentation. Maintain a complete employee performance 5. Finally, food of thought. If as per now you're having a case in court, this case was taken to the court tomorrow. Do you have evidence for every step? Do you have evidence in every step in this checklist? I don't expect you to answer that question, but you can think about it. In conclusion, as I wind up, in performance cases, employer don't lose because the employees were not good. They lose because the process was weak. So thank you for your time, and we'll be discussing more on this in our upcoming summit. The summit is called Strategic Management and Strategic Performance Management, and of course, we'll be having a summit on this. It will be a strategic balance of labor law, strategy, and operation. This time, you'll have an opportunity to hear from the mouth of a CEO. What does the CEO expect from you, and from the legal side? So please register. If you need any assistance, please register with any of us. Again, we'll speak more about this. Again, back to you. Any question, we can respond, or any reaction.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Polo. Very good conversation there. The floor is open. Any questions for Dan? Any questions for Apollo? We can put in the chat. You can also unmute and ask your questions or share something that you'd like to share with us. As I wait for you to shoot your question, let me give you something to think about. Feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to unmute. This is my question to you. Oh, we have enough things on the chat. I'll check. A staff member has missed deadlines repeatedly, but says workload is too high and expectations are unclear. Let me know in the chat. How do you proceed? Do you start a PAP immediately, or what should happen first, or what support is needed? At the same time, I'm picking questions for either Dan and Apollo, or comments. I hope. Yeah. Let's see what you have in the chat. I'm transcribing this code with that. Then we have someone saying something. Is it mandatory for the staff to sign off the PIP? Dan, you want to answer that one? Is it mandatory for the staff to sign off the PIP?
For the staff to sign the PIP, because that is the only evidence you have. But sometimes the employee might be difficult. In case where the employee refuses to sign, please ensure that is documented, that this particular employee was given the document to sign on this particular day, but this particular employee did not sign. I know most employees may refuse to sign PIP because of how they view PIPs. So yes, it is important, but they might refuse to sign. So when I say it's mandatory, you might use it as a way of forcing the employees to sign, but I might say it is very important for them to sign. But in case they don't sign, please acknowledge and document that this particular employee was given an opportunity to sign, but he did not acknowledge or agree to it.
And also all HR documents, when you give them offer letters, confirm anything that you communicate to the employee, they have to acknowledge receipt. Otherwise, if they claim that you are faking the document, if you go to court, you can't prove that they're not saying the truth. We have another question here from Fancy. Is it appropriate to place an employee on a form of PIP during probation? Any of you can take it. Apollo, you can. Dan, you can. Is it okay to place an employee during probation period?
Apollo, do you want to take it, or I can take it?
Yeah, I can. Let me take it. During probation, you didn't start with a PIP. You didn't have what you call a set target. During probation, you are assessing the skill fit of this person. You've already gone through the recruitment procedure. You found that the person has potential. He's capable to fit into the job. And then you've given him an opportunity to demonstrate his capability within the 3 months probation period. So after the 3 months, and you've not been able to feel clear in your mind that this guy fits within the job, that's the time you can now say, now that the probation period is over and we have not seen you fitting within the job role, and the skill gap, we are experiencing skill gap within by the way you are doing your work, can we enter into a PIP so that we can be able to put you online? And if it doesn't happen, then obviously we may not be able to absorb. So during the probation period itself, uh, unless you did put those particular clear, tangible, and demonstrable objectives and targets, then you cannot do it halfway in the middle of the probation period. I would suggest that you do it at the end of the probation. Tell the person that you're not able to continue until we do a PIP that will enable you to realign yourself with the job and the law that we have, and then you're able to progress. I also want to go back to the question that earlier on had been asked. Is it mandatory for a staff to sign a PIP? It is important for them to acknowledge, because as I said, uh, that is documentary evidence that can be used later on. And also, how have you structured your PIPs, your performance management systems? Is it seen as a punitive process such that anytime you introduce it, somebody feels, now I'm getting into a very hot corner? But if there's that very good environment, employee-employer relationship environment, whereby they see a TFE as a tool or as a process that will enable them to improve their capabilities, their skills, their efficiencies, then they'll quickly agree to sign it off, because it gives them that chance to engage management, to express their shortcomings, to express their fears and their worries, and to explain to the management why they are not able to meet their objectives. So it will depend on how you handle it and how it is looked at within the organization, whether it's a tool of punishing and separating. But if you manage it well, then every employee will be very quick to say, let's go along this route, let's get into this process, because I know at the end of the day, it will be beneficial to me and to the organization. I hope to have responded adequately.
Thank you very much, Apollo, to both questions. On the performance, on the PIP during performance, I also want to just add something. And if you extend someone's performance, if you extend my performance, my probation period, when you extend the probation period, it's very important that you're very clear. Why are you extending? You may not call it a PIP, but you have to be very clear. We are extending because of the following, and this is what you did not achieve. So it's almost like a PIP during probation, but that is if we extend the probation period fancy. The part B of that question is, should performance concern and that be handled with the probation framework itself, and what is the best practice managing this? So I think you also have a chance to terminate the person based on probation, but remember, we had a president, I think last year, but one that said, even during probation, the employee must be given a fair hearing. You can't just terminate because you're on probation. You have to go through the fair process. They explain, you tell them why you're not confirming them, and then only after that can you now proceed and terminate. So substantive justice and procedural justice. Let's see what the questions are here. Is acknowledgement on email acceptable, right? Where an employee declines to attend a PIP and alleges concerns that are not existent, and you have evidence, what are the steps to take? I want to have any of you take the question. I skipped a question from Victoria, but I'll come back to it. Let me start with Victoria. So Victoria's question is, if a PIP is undertaken during the probation period and a disciplinary process is completed, should you still give them a 7-day notice? So let me answer that before I pass to Dan and Apollo, and see that PIP should not be used for performance issues. PIP is a performance thing, and we should always ask ourselves, is it a capacity issue or a conduct or a disciplinary issue? If someone is coming to work late, or they're insubordinate, or I don't know, they are not doing more, the things that we call gross misconduct or misconduct, that is not a performance issue. So performance has to be a capability issue, something that they are not doing that needs a training, some support of some sort, and things like that. But if it's a disciplinary issue, that does not go through the PIP process. I don't know that I've responded to you. Dan and Apollo, feel free to add on that. Is a PIP undertaken during the probation period and the disciplinary process is completed, should you still give them a 7-day notice if you go through the disciplinary process during PIP?
Well, as I said during my presentations, Jane, PIP is not a disciplinary process. The two distinct procedures. So if it's a PAP you are applying, you already have had prior conversations based on the JD of the employee, based on the set targets, set objectives, which have been agreed and reduced into KPIs. And then you are evaluating that and seeing that the person is not meeting those objectives. And so, what is the reason? What is happening? And what do we need to do make you achieve and become a full potential employee? That is the purpose of a PIP, to just realign the person back on course if he has fallen away. Uh, but if it's a disciplinary matter, let it be very distinct that this person has committed an offense within the organization that is against the company policies and procedures, that is against the rules of the land or whatever it is, and then a disciplinary process is initiated. You cannot mix the two. A PIP doubling up or being handled together with a disciplinary process. Let them be very distinct, otherwise you'll be getting yourself into a very unpleasant situation. That might take
And as you can see on the screen, the first thing when a manager comes to you with HR is to distinguish, even if you're a line manager and you have joined us today, the first thing is best practice to distinguish, is it a performance or a misconduct? You're looking at my screen. Performance issue, if it's a capability gap, a skills gap, an output gap, go the PAP way. If it's a misconduct, you go the disciplinary process way. Insubordination, fraud, absenteeism, coming to work drunk, all those things. That is a misconduct. We always have that differentiation because you're saying if you misuse a PAP for misconduct, you're going to expose yourself to legal liability. Let me see if we have another question here. I don't think there's another question. I hope I've not missed. Is it mandatory for the staff to sign that? We have answered. Share recordings. Is it appropriate? PIP something. Acknowledgement on email. Is it acceptable? Yeah, sure, done.
Yes. It is acceptable, yes. Email was sent to the correct address. Ensure that the email was sent to the correct address. There is the receipt, and of course, keep email trail. Keep record of email trail. Email acknowledgement is accepted.
Yeah, but of course, it comes with a caution. If someone is already declining to sign even the PIP, already it's already starting on a very bad footing. So I would also ask that as HR at that point you pause and have conversation with that particular employee, just in case, because sometimes managers may not be right. At that point, just have a conversation, get to understand what are their concerns, where are they refusing to sign? Is it because the other things that are affecting the performance or making them not perform, or what exactly is the issue? And you can actually have that conversation and follow it with an email or a letter. Help us understand why you will not agree to this. What is your side of the story? Just in case they say they have not been heard or they have explained and the things are beyond what they could do, what they could deliver. So we can't have a black and white context analysis of whatever is happening so that you are able to make a decision. Any other question? Anyone that has a question?
I can see a question by Victoria Jane.
I think another one. Why is the disciplinary process undertaken where one is incapable of doing their work? It shouldn't happen, but Victoria and Dan can, Apollo and Dan can take that. The part B of it seems a good title for the indiscipline issues of gross misconduct, but is there better terminology to distinguish between lack of capability and lack of discipline? I'll let you answer it again, Apollo. The two are different, Victoria, but I pass it to Apollo.
I think you've already done your presentation there is very straight and clear, Jane. That issues of performance, which is work-related capabilities of doing the work, the skills to do the work, and the efficiency to do it. That is limited through a PIP. But if it is a case of misconduct, as you said, if it's a fraud case, why do you need to take someone to a PIP so that he doesn't steal again? You initiate a disciplinary process immediately, and you let it take its course. So, Victoria, there's those two distinctions: work-related capability, skills gaps, performance efficiency. PIP comes in. If it is a disciplinary based on those other items that are listed within the Employment Act, then you apply the disciplinary process as well, as guided by the law. Otherwise, you mix the two, you'll get yourself into hot soup.
Yeah. So thank you very much. So if you have no other questions, I'll give you a summary, a conclusion. I hope I'm not missing anything. Let's see. We have info now. We have Dan has shared a link. I'll have him talk about it in a few. To join our WhatsApp group for JM Next Level HR Mastermind. I seen this year shared maybe the registration form. We have the event here, as you can see it. We'll be holding our a summit 9th and 10th of April. If we are online tonight and you'd like us to give you a discount, if you're joining us, we are happy to extend a discount for anyone that joins us for and pays and commits at least by next week Friday. We are happy to extend a discount. Instead of 35K, we can charge 30K for those of us who are joining tonight. So feel free to talk to me, to talk to Dan, call the number that is there, register, and we're going to have that particular discussion. The summit is not just for HR professionals. We'll also be addressing things that matter to line managers. So even for line managers that you have, it's a good chance for them to come and sit and learn from the best in terms of performance management. It will not just be focusing on the HR. So even for your line managers, please extend this to them. If you give us more than 2 participants in the training, we are also happy to discuss discounts. We have a lawyer attending. We have good people that are as good as Paul and Dan here tonight. We have a lawyer, Sadia. The case you saw there for HRM, she's the lawyer that handled. And we'll be having the CEO, Henry Mbugwa from a microfinance, and Sheila Masinde from Transparency International, just giving us what is this that they feel we should be supporting as HR, apart from just coming maybe in for the PAPs and things to do that. So feel free to do that. I see we have some more messages. Let me just look at that and then we conclude. There's someone called Daniel Muteki. This is amazing session. See you next time. That's okay. How do you separate with someone who still doesn't perform after PAP process? Dan, you talked about that. Please respond, and you could use a case so that it comes out clear that it is still a separation and you have to obey the law. Over to you, Dan.
I didn't get the question, please.
The question is, how do I separate with someone, it's on the screen, who still doesn't perform after a PAP process? It is the termination after PAP.
So the termination after PAP, there is we have to follow up the Section 41 of the Employment Act, a fair hearing. An employee must be given a fair hearing. I said PAP is not just an issue. Of course, when the issue is performance and you have accorded the employee the necessary support to improve, and if it doesn't improve, of course, follow the disciplinary process. If there's need to issue a show cause letter, issue a show cause letter. Invite this employee for disciplinary hearing. Allow them to, allow representation. Ensure that you write in the letter inviting employee for disciplinary hearing that they have a right of representation, that they are given opportunity to be heard, and state all the allegation. If you're issuing all the show cause letter must have all the allegation that this particular employee is being accused of, because now it becomes an issue of performance. Then make a reasoned decision. Just because it doesn't perform, do not jump straight to termination. I know sometimes issues of performance, it's a very, how do I call it? Sometimes CEOs want to address it now. This particular employee is not performing, but still follow the procedure, and this employee will still go. So you could follow the same procedure.
Yeah, so any separation must have those 2 steps. You must have a valid reason, and you must for the due process. For this particular one, the valid reason is performance. You have gone to the PAP, so you already have an offense, or you already have a reason. But then you must follow the process, call them for a hearing, give them the show cause, they must explain why they should not be terminated, the whole of that process. So for any separation, you have to always hear the employee, have them defend themselves, and then you can make a decision. The show cause, the whole of that particular process, as long as you're going to separate. So allow me to just conclude this by just summarizing what we have seen from the 2 speakers tonight in terms of the best performance, best practice. And one of it is that we should never have surprises. A PAP should never be the first time an employee hears about performance concerns. There must have been an informal feedback, documented conversations where applicable, so someone doesn't feel like it's witch hunt. They should be knowing that they have been told, I don't have concerns on how this is being handled. So that's first principle. No surprises, no ambush. Then we have number 2, it must be very specific. You must be able to say what exactly is it. Don't say things like you have a poor attitude, you're not performing well. It has to be very clear what exactly is this that you're talking about. You must have observable, measurable evidence, e.g., missed deadlines, targets not met. You have received complaints about this. They have to be very, very, very observable, measurable with evidence. Number 3, so we are saying if you cannot explain it, you cannot manage it, and therefore you cannot put me on a PIP. Number 3, it must be based on evidence, not emotions. So it's performance data, emails, document, and incidents. There must be proof from the line manager. So one of the things that we have to do as HR as part of best practice is to train line managers for them to understand how to even document the concerns they're having with employees if they feel we need to go to a PIP. Then it doesn't look like the manager is actually abusing their position. So no personal bias, no assumptions of I feel she's not performing well, I feel she's not committed. Those things cannot qualify for a PIP. It must stand a HR audit and legal scrutiny. There must be documentation that you can actually attach and say, because of the following, the person went to a PIP. And number 4, we already talked about it, distinguish performance versus misconduct. So don't put someone on PIP when they're supposed to be going through the disciplinary process. And number 5 is identify the root cause before action. When you miss this process, and maybe the employee is not because of his things within his control, that is not doing something, they will even refuse to sign those particular minutes. They will see it's an unfair thing that you're doing to them. So there must be a root process for you to be able to identify, do we give this a PIP or do we do something different? There's one case I know that Dan talked about it, the one for Barclays, where an employee had worked there for 13 years, grew from a teller to a very senior person, I think a regional manager. And then after a promotion, after working there for 13 years, they were put on a PIP. And they went to court and won that particular case. Why? It didn't look clear. This is someone who has worked here in the bank, some similar positions, they have always performed. And now out of the blue, now we are saying they are not performing. There must have been something else. So they felt that the process was unfair. You can see for the process, you can say they are not performing, you go to the hearing, and when they go to court, they win. So be very fair. And that's our work as HR. As the line manager, so be very fair. Is it true, if you look at this particular, were the reasons within their control for them not to have performed, or is it that they like, is the work realistic? If I'm doing work for 2 people, I'm not going to sign a PIP. And all those things. If I don't have a job description, I'm not going to sign a PIP. Because I'll say I didn't know that was my work. So those basics of HR must be in place. A policy, a job description. Did you have a performance, a KPI set? So I never set a KPI plan. I don't have a job description. I don't know what. I might say, these are not my KPIs, and therefore I'm not going to sign this particular one. So we should always go for the root cause before you give someone a PIP. Number 6, you have to set clear, measurable expectations for that particular PIP. It must define what must improve, by when are you going to meet. It must be very clear. So it cannot be fake. So an example is submit weekly reports by Friday 5 p.m. with 0 data errors for 6 consecutive weeks. And then you must have follow-up, like maybe we'll meet every week when you come to the review. We are going to meet every week to see whether this is achieved. So week 1, done. Week 2, good. Week 3, we still have errors. By the time we get to week 6, all of us are aware that this was done. So the person was given a very clear, measurable things that were expected. They achieved or they didn't achieve. When it is this clear, it makes your work easy as the line manager or as the HR. The other thing is they provide structured support. And I'm sure in the case that Dan shared, there must have been something about lack of support. If you put someone in a PIP because of a capability issue, you must show how are you going to support them to achieve that. Because the intention is not to win in court if they sue you. The intention is to help them succeed. So you must show, if the person is not meeting targets, how are you supporting them for them to go to meet targets? What is the issue? Have you asked them to request for support? And what are you doing for it? So are you training? Are you coaching? Are you doing workload qualification? Are you addressing the things that they feel? If this is not removed, if this is not provided, I therefore cannot perform. So if you give them a PIP and there's no support that has been provided, either at the point of planning or during the process, you still lose. If there's no support, it is not a real PIP. It is something to make that employee leave employment, and the judge will see through it. Number 8, you need to define clear timelines. Are we doing this for 60 days, 90 days, or indefinite time? So if this is not there, you'll get in trouble. I've seen people who have open-ended PIPs. You put someone on a PIP, it has not been signed, it doesn't have an end date. And then next year, when you're not coping with them, you start telling them you still have an active PIP. That is abuse. They will say they do not know when it expired and they've been performing well in between there. So again, if it is 3 months, you should be very clear that this PIP is for the next 3 months from this particular day to this particular day. We'll see another one there, but let me just say it here as a best practice. A PIP must have a closure also. The same way you're sitting and saying effective 1st of April is when you're putting for your PIP. When you finish that PIP, as a best practice, you must have a closure. You must come and say, your PIP was expiring today, it's expiring next week. We need to review and close. Are we extending? Are we closing or what? Or are we separating? How are we pursuing this? So don't have 90 days, they're over, and you keep the employee in limbo. It is a bad practice. Even if you don't fire them, it's a bad feeling for that particular employee. So number 9 is a best practice, hold regular review meetings, schedule structured follow-ups by weekly, and they are very clear. We are going to discuss the progress on this, what are the challenges, what support you need, and those other things. And then those meetings must be documented. Have means that you share so that people can actually see that the support was there and this was given. So a silent manager is a failed PIP. If nothing happened between the 3 months, then you're just setting me up for failure. And that is not the purpose of performance management, neither the purpose of PIPs. Then we have number 10, document everything. If you don't document, too bad for you. So keep records of the initial discussion, the agreed plan, the progress updates, the employee responses, and ensure employee acknowledgement and sign off. So for here, if an employee refuses to sign those things, which PIP are we then agreeing to? And what is the root cause? So I'll be very worried if that happens. So we have to go deep and understand why are they refusing to sign. So documentation protects both the employee and the organization, and it must have good intentions, which is for them to improve and keep their job. So if they have refused to sign, we're already starting from a very antagonistic space, and I have no idea how that would proceed. There could be conflict between the employee and the manager that you need to address before you make them sign that particular document. 11 is ensure fairness and consistency. Be consistent. One employee gets away with this, another employee doesn't. Is given a PIP. So if there's no that consistent on how you are applying your policies, you'll get in trouble. The process lacks credibility. And that is why, from a HR perspective, it's very important that you have a policy on how PIPs are managed. At what point does someone start a PIP? And if they're on a PIP, how do you address that? When you don't have a policy, managers do what they think. This one comes, nothing is done to them. Another one comes, they are put on a PIP. So very important that from the HR perspective, you have a template, you have a policy, and people are trained on how to address to increase the fairness and stuff like that. This should be the last one. Of course, respectful language. People should not feel like it is like they're in harm or whatever that we are having right now because of how the discussions are going. So it is not about humiliation. They need to have, it's about improvement. And you must manage the tone and the conversation that are in that particular room if you're the HR. Discuss with the manager so that they come with an open mind to be able to help that particular employee. And of course, like Apollo had said, the manager must remain accountable. This is not a HR process. We are just coordinating as HR. The manager must know that the KPIs are his. He must sign that with the employee. There must be an approved JD. There must be follow-up consistently, and they must provide support. So it is not a HR owned, it is manager-led. So as HR don't accept to be transferred for this particular problem. We are supporting the manager, but it is their business to support and manage that particular employee. They are the ones who are complaining about his performance. So let them be accountable in the process. Otherwise, it could be the manager's problem. So again, the employee needs to know if they don't improve, what happens. So don't avoid ambiguity. If they don't improve, what happens? Have that transparency. We expect that you are going to successfully improve. If you don't improve, we might extend it for 3 months. That can even be the policy. If it's possible, we can move ABCD. Otherwise, if it doesn't improve, this position is so key, we might have to terminate you. And of course, when it ends, like I've said, always conclude, close the file, let people know that it has been closed. And then, if you use the PIP as an exit tool, you need to fire Jane, we put her on a PIP. We all know it's not because you want her to improve. It causes a lot of bitterness in the organization. Most employees who are put through this for the purpose of letting them go have a very bad feeling. So for me, my personal principle is if I know we want to fire you, then we better just look we better call you on the table and discuss about that because there must be reasons why people want to fire you to let you go. than having to frustrate you for 3 months, 6 months on a PIP that you all know we are not supporting you. So very important. So every PIP list to exit, your system is broken. It means you could be abusing PIPs in your organization. So as I finish, a best practice PIP is structured, evidence-based, supportive, and fair. It is designed to improve performance, not just to justify performance. Thank you very much. I'll again remind you about our event. That will be on the 9th and 9th and 10th of April at well, this done that it will be
That is Mount Lenana.
Assist Lenana, and I'm in a good mood of extending a discount tonight. So here we go. You probably have seen it around. This particular one, we'll be discussing 2 days, very practical in terms of how we have the discussions, in a way that we want people to not go home with knowledge, but with improved competencies on terms of how you deliver this particular process going forward. Not just HR, but HR and even the legals that are improved in it, the best practice. We'll share templates, we'll talk about policies, we'll audit. It will be a very holistic process in terms of discussing PIPs and how to handle this with confidence. So thank you very much. Feel free to say something as you leave. Feel free to unmute and speak to both Apollo and Dan if you have something to say, and the rest of the JM Mastermind. Otherwise, we have now finished. Have a beautiful night ahead.
Nothing from me, guys. I just wish everybody a happy Eid tomorrow and have a nice weekend.
Thank you, Apollo. I'll give you a call in a few.
Thank you everyone for joining the summit.
Thank you, Prime. Thank you, Jeleting. Thank you, Judy. Bye-bye, bye-bye, and thank you. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Mother. Thank you, GN. The clubs are looking so nice from this end. Thank you, Burial. Thank you, Faith. Thank you, Biambo. Asanteni sana, asanteni sana. Have a good night to all of you. We hope to see you next Thursday. We'll be having a beautiful topic again.